Hey everybody, welcome to the webinar. We will be getting going in just a brief hot minute here. So we like to give everyone, I don't know, let's call it 2 to 3 minutes to kind of join up here. Just to give you a little bit of a preview, today we are doing a follow-up from our last webinar, sort of the V2 of that webinar on NFT gaming. This is in honor, the Bitwave team spent the week at GDC this week, which was delightful and fun and super entertaining. Saw lots of cool stuff, got to hang out with lots of really cool crypto companies, as well as just general gaming companies and things like that. So it was a really, really fun week. And in honor of that, we want to do a second webinar that kind of deals, we're going to be spending a little bit more time today on the games themselves in some ways. Like last time we went over some of the high level, why this is interesting, some of the accounting stuff. This webinar today is going to be a little bit more about some of the games and some other cool stuff like that. So we'll give everyone a minute or two to join. It's only 11 a.m. on the West Coast right now, 11:01. So we'll get rolling about 11:02 here. So just get settled, get ready, enjoy, grab a cup of your favorite hot beverage, or perhaps cold if that's what you're into. It's cold in San Francisco right now, so it's hard to imagine. It's like 50 degrees right now. It's hard to imagine someone wanting a cold beverage instead of good coffee right now. But whatever it is you're drinking, grab it, and we will get going in about 2 minutes. Well, one thing we like to do is while we're all sitting here waiting, we throw up a little poll here. So feel free to enjoy this poll. How many NFTs do you own? And I always say this, and it is true. We are tracking this month over month. Every webinar we do, we track sort of the same sets of data. So we are hopefully going to have, like, over the next 2 or 3 years, interesting data about how the numbers move in our system. So we'll give everyone a minute or two to join here. I think we're getting pretty close to what looks like a quorum. We'll give everyone 1 more minute to join. So sit back and answer the question. How many NFTs do you own? 0, 1, 2 to 5, 5 to 10, or more than 10? Gosh, I think my answer is 5 to 10.
Oh my gosh.
I think that's my answer. What's Joe, what's your answer?
Oh, I'm triple digits for sure.
Triple digits at this point?
Oh yeah. Oh, I got 100 in my hidden folder that I don't want to that are worth nothing, that I don't want to see anymore. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Of the people who have voted so far, 26% own more than 10. So we have a good NFT crowd here.
I love that. That's fun. How many people own 0?
50%.
So it's kind of like this, like we have that U. I feel like everything in crypto tends to be that U shape of distribution, which is you have like a lot of people that have yet to adopt, and then the people, the degens on the other side, like Joe here, that have way over adopted and over indexed.
Oh yeah. I've never seen a free mint I didn't want. I max mint them all. So yeah, that's me.
No, I love it. It's spectacular. All right, let's get rolling here and wrap this bad boy up. So what were the final numbers? Let's see. It should pop up for me here, or maybe okay. So final numbers on this were 52% owned 0. And then it was kind of a slow ramp up to 30% that owned 10. So super, super interesting. I was actually expecting to see like a bunch of people at like that one NFT and then kind of go from there. So super interesting. Great. Thank you so much, everybody. I anticipate by next year that will be a very, very different mix of things. So, okay. Feel free to ask any questions in the chat or in the Q&A section. We'll get to them as we kind of go through all this. I always like to start our webinar with this, is that we are, Bitwave is hosting a summit for, if you enjoy the content in this or any of our webinars, anything about how businesses are using digital assets, we are hosting a summit for business leaders, product managers, accountants, finance people, tax people, anyone who is interested in the business of digital assets. We are hosting a summit in Austin in June. This is piggybacking on Consensus in general. It's the day before. It's at the Hotel Zaza. If you're interested in a discount code, please email info@bitwave.io. We are happy to give you a very good discount code for anyone that wants to come. And it's the Enterprise Digital Asset Summit. You can find it by just searching for the Enterprise Digital Asset Summit It's the top result on Google, or looking at our Twitter, or looking on our website where we have it linked out, which I think is right, Amy. We have it linked out, right? Amy will double check that. So it'll be super fun. It'll be just nonstop content like what you get from these webinars. So just expanded over a day with a lot more like guest stars from, you know, companies, famous big companies, people that do this stuff every day, just talking about how the world is changing with digital assets. So very, very excited. You guys know me. My name is Pat White. I'm the CEO of Bitwave. I am a passionate lover of all things digital assets and of enterprise software, and hence where Bitwave came from on all that stuff. And what do I say in here? This is just a pitch for Bitwave. This isn't about me. All right. Well, that's about Bitwave. Bitwave does digital asset, tax, accounting, software tracking, AR, AP, and everything up and down the stack. Joe, you want to introduce yourself, my friend?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a manager in our product solutions team. So I work day to day, kind of hand in hand with a lot of the clients that use our software. So my background is in accounting. So I'm a CPA, I'm a certified fraud examiner. But like we were kind of chatting about at the beginning, I'm a crypto and NFT specifically enthusiast. So I came over to Bitwave after about 12 years in public accounting.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. So here we have a CPA enthusiast on the line. That'll be fun. So we'll spend a little bit of time. We won't do a lot of deep dive into this piece of it, which is we'll do a quick intro to NFTs, what it is. We'll talk a little about GameFi. So this is just a fun recap for people that are new to this on all of it. Well then, so I'm going to do a little bit of intro to GameFi, and then I'm going to talk about some of the games that are out there. Like one of the things we want to do today, given that we're hoping that that there's a lot of people on here who are from the gaming companies from GDC, we want to spend a little bit of time talking about the actual games that people are playing. So, last time we talked about some of the archetypes and how people use NFTs, but today we actually want to spend some time on the games themselves. So this should be kind of fun. I'm excited to sort of talk about it. And then I'm going to hand it over to Joe to talk about accounting for NFT blockchain assets. We always like to end with some advice on how to make your accountant's life easier. I had a new one this week. I'm going to jump in at the end. I had a new one this week that someone came up with. It's a really good one. And then we'll end with a Q&A for everyone who wants to get involved here. As always, this is not tax advice. This is not accounting advice. This is purely what Bitwave sees in the industry. If you are in need of a tax or accountant, please reach out to one of our partners at bitwave.io. We have a whole partner list, or someone who is a professional in the space who can give you official advice and craft opinions. There are a lot of knobs and dials in the digital asset space around this stuff. So, having a trusted advisor who can kind of give you a good opinion and back it up is a very important part of being a digital asset company. We work with a number of them. They are the best human beings in the world. And we are always happy to do referrals out to them. So you can reach out to info@bitwave.io or bitwave.io. There's a partner page that's on there. So, all right. So let's start with what is an NFT, and hopefully this won't be too repetitive for anyone that has heard this before, but I do like to talk about it in case we have anyone new on the line here. So an NFT is a non-fungible token. An NFT is named thusly to differentiate it from fungible tokens. So if you've heard about Ethereum, Bitcoin, Uniswap, Unis token, any of those are fungible tokens. The idea is that it's like a US dollar. Like fungibility is the idea that if I have two $1 bills, they're totally interchangeable. It doesn't matter what dollar bill I own. There's nothing important about the instance of the dollar bill itself. It is a token. It is an instance of a currency that is completely interchangeable with any other instance of a currency. So that's how most tokens in the crypto ecosystem work. Non-fungible tokens is the idea that an NFT is a uniquely identifiable token. So when you get an NFT, with Bitwave, we own a stoner cat. So Bitwave, we own this really wonderful. I'm so proud of this. This is a little Easter egg on our website, which is this is one of our customers. This is an NFT that we own. So if you go to the bitwave.io, this is loading up OpenSea here. You can see that we own this. You could see if OpenSea was going right now that we own this instance of this stoner cat. There are 10,000 different stoner cats. We happen to get the one where he's holding coffee because I love coffee and I bought the NFT. So I got to pick the one that's coffee. But if you look at there's a lot of other stoner cats you can own, and each one is unique. So one of the things to recognize, and we'll talk about this as we get into, is that pay attention to this number here, because that's essentially the edition number is maybe a good way to think about it. That's not exactly the right way. It is the instance ID of the particular NFT that we own. So we own the cool cat that has the Bitcoin collar and is drinking coffee. There are other Stoner Cat NFTs out there. We own 9237. If we look at like one of these other ones that are out here, gosh, I chose a bad time to do this demo of someone else's website. That's on me, everybody. I should have. I guess I just like inadvertently took down OpenSea's website by doing this. But if you look, there are other Stoner Cats that are out there. You know, there are other instances. This is the 662. We own 9327, the 662. Each of them is uniquely identifiable. It's a really common pattern with art-based NFTs where you see something like this, where you have a kind of a base design of a character that then different attributes are flipped based on it. So in this case, you can see there's 4 or 5 or 6 different base characters here. This is the one that we have, but we don't have the one giving the middle finger. We have the one holding coffee, and it has the Bitcoin piece of it. And what tends to happen with NFTs is the rarity of the different attributes are kind of based on, or the value tends to be based on the rarity of the attributes. So I know we're going a little bit deeper than we normally go on NFTs, but I think this is kind of fun that this is a different kind of thing that you might not know about it. It's all algorithmically generated. So essentially what the designer of an NFT will do is they design out, you know, these eyes, this mouth, this overall structure, this background. You know, from that, the computer program comes in and it recomposes these into an individual NFT for you. So our NFT was the composition of these different attributes. From that, that's all happens algorithmically. It's pretty cool stuff. So that is like what an NFT is at a very, very high level. It is a unique instance of a token that has unique properties, such as, you know, smoking a joint and carrying a martini here for Stoner Cats. That's I don't know how often that's said on webinars for enterprise SaaS products, but we are enterprise SaaS products. So, but you know, if you step back for a little bit, what is really valuable at NFT? So the artistic aspect is really fun. It's something a lot of us have gotten into. Over 30% of us have obviously really gotten into it from this webinar today. But stepping back, the important part here is the provable ownership. So the image itself is not necessarily the most interesting thing. And I love talking about Stoner Cats because Stoner Cats has done a really great job embodying or embracing this methodology, which is, yes, you got a really cool image and a bit of art that you kind of own that you can use, and then you might have copyrights. You might have copyrights that come along with it and things like that. But then Stoner Cats also, I can actually show you, Stoner Cats also then allows you to, if you go to their website and connect in so it knows me by my MetaMask that I have connected. It then allows me to watch one of their episodes. So essentially what they've done is they've tied ownership of the NFT to membership in a club. In this case, the club is people that can watch their episodes. And so that's the part that's really exciting about NFTs. It's not just about the art. It's this idea that once you own it, you can start doing provable stuff around it. And so what you can do is, if you think about other NFTs that are out there, like Bored Ape Yacht Club, Bored Ape, you know, you own the Bored Ape, which is exciting, but then you also get access to yacht parties. Like, you know, Playboy at NFT NYC last year did a yacht party that I think David Guetta or someone like that played at. I mean, just crazy. Will I Am, I think, showed up. And so like, this is a thing where like, ownership of the NFT. I own the private keys that controls that address. Well, actually Bitwave owns them, but I have them on my computer. And that controls that address, but then allows us to then watch that TV series or get access to that yacht club party or whatever it is from there. So that's the part that's super exciting. I like to think, you know, if people are on the fence about NFTs, which is very, very reasonable, not everyone believes in this kind of stuff. An example that I tend to give is Supreme, Supreme is a clothing brand that they sell like $300 sweatshirts. And it's one of those things that like, you either are in the club, which is you own a Supreme sweatshirt and you recognize other people who own Supreme. You know about the club, which is that when I see someone walk around a sweatshirt, I'm like, oh yeah, that guy's into streetwear. Like he's willing to spend 2 hours waiting in line for a sweatshirt. Like that's dope. He probably has nice sneakers. And then there's everyone else that's like, oh yeah, look at that person with a sweatshirt. Like it's the same idea. It's this membership in the club, but in this case, it's provable, and it's provable on the blockchain. And so that's where you can now start to see other things. Like other use cases that start to come up around NFTs have been based purely on membership. So Gary Vaynerchuk is doing a membership to a restaurant, where in order to get into the restaurant, you have to own one of these NFTs. And that actually gives you the ability to go in the restaurant. You know, the idea of social clubs that have membership has been around forever and ever and ever and ever. But the idea of social clubs that have membership that you can sell that then get monetized through secondary royalties, which Joe is going to talk about later, that's totally new. And that's super, super exciting. So the thing about NFTs, you know, set aside the art piece, whether you like it or not, set aside some of the other pieces. It is provable ownership of, cryptographically provable ownership of something that you can then dangle a bunch of stuff, whether it be, you know, TV shows or yacht parties or eating dinner at a restaurant. You can dangle all that stuff off of that provable ownership, because only one person can own that. You can prove using your keys that it is that you are the owner of it. So that's an NFT. So let's talk about GameFi. This term might be a funny term because it is a funny term. It's an evolutionary term. So one of the things that happened for a while was there's a term out there called DeFi, which stands for decentralized finance. This term was minted maybe, I don't know, it's called 3 or 4 years ago at this point, maybe just a little longer than that. And it was this idea of, on the blockchain, you essentially can start to do a lot of financial operations in a decentralized way. Borrowing money, lending money, buying stocks, selling stocks, creating, you know, derivatives, you know, parametric insurance, whatever it is. All that stuff is available on the blockchain today. And if you do it in a decentralized manner, that is DeFi. DeFi was created as a bit of a counter to two other FIs. One is TradFi. So if I go to Citibank and I borrow money, that's TradFi, traditional finance, TradFi. The other one is CeFi, which is centralized finance. This is where you overlap digital assets, but you are centralized. Celsius, BlockFi, Celsius, BlockFi, different companies like that, where you can go and you can borrow money, you can deposit collateral, whatever it is. Those are CeFi because they're not run on the blockchain. They're not anonymous. They're not decentralized. They are companies that are like venture-backed companies in the US. So you have TradFi, which is JP Morgan, CeFi, which is like Celsius or BlockFi, and then you have DeFi, which is like, you know, Aave, Compound, Uniswap, all those guys. GameFi was the next logical step there. Whether it be logical or not, that's not my choice to make. But GameFi was this idea of like, okay, once we start to bring gaming to the blockchain, we're going to give it a name. And the reason Fi got in there is that finance it's short for finance, is that a lot of the blockchain gaming stuff is built around financial incentives. So if gaming up until this point has really been all about capturing the user's attention and sort of entertaining the user, GameFi is this idea that we're going to overlay finance on top of it. While I was at GDC, I had a great conversation with someone about this who hated this. And it was really, really interesting. It was a really interesting conversation because I don't begrudge him at all. It was a great talk. I enjoyed it a lot. But he said, like, he made this really interesting point, which was, at what point does gaming like this become work? And it was a really great point to me because I was able to immediately judo move it against him. Because at the end of the day, like, gaming has over the last few years been about a major component of gaming is about the grind. So if you play World of Warcraft, like grinding for gear, there's a great South Park episode where they go and they kill, 100,000 boars to level up. Like that, it was a joke, but like everyone who plays these games knows that was not a joke. Like it was a joke that's not a joke, like funny, not funny, because that's literally what it is. Like, and if you play Fallout, like you grind to get your levels up. Like grinding is a part of these games. And so the idea of GameFi is saying, what if as part of the grind, we actually enable more use of the utility you're grinding? And oh, by the way, what if we allow different people to engage in different ways with the grind? So whereas someone who's, a 14-year-old who doesn't have a lot of money, who is totally content to like sit and kill pigs on World of Warcraft, can kind of grind and then earn loot and maybe sell some of it to then pay for other stuff and actually can kind of get a bit of a reward on their grind. someone that has more money, like a white collar worker who wants to just play the game to enjoy it and doesn't want to grind, can go and buy those things and just start playing the game at a higher level. It might be a bit upsetting to some kind of hardcore gamers, but at the end of the day, it's not a bad model for this stuff. It's this idea that we're going to acknowledge that different people want to engage with games differently, and we want to align the games with the incentive structure that those people want to kind of play them with. And so GameFi is about, basically, it's incentive structures getting built into games at a very, very high level. The easiest way to describe it is that most games out there have some form of in-game economy. Every single, I mean, outside of, like, I don't know, actually, I was going to say Candy Crush, but Candy Crush absolutely has an in-game economy. That's a terrible example. They have a massive in-game economy. So outside of Tetris, Tetris does not have an in-game economy, but most other games do have an in-game economy. So the idea behind GameFi is asking the question, which is, what if we turn an in-game economy into a little bit, we basically smear that across the metaverse a little bit, and we lift what is only inside of a single game, we lift it out of that game by itself, and we let you do something with the gold coins that you're getting. We actually let you do something with those gold coins. With the armor that you're picking up, we actually let you go and sell that or compose it. I mean, there's really cool stuff. GDC, there was a company called Phantasm that was, they were using NFTs that were composable. So what they did is they had a car racing game where you could take your car, you would buy into the game, and you get a car. You could take that car and you could break it apart, and you could break it into the carburetor and the hood and the spoiler and the engine and like the tires and all that kind of stuff. You could sell off individual parts. You could buy new parts, and then you could recompose it and then play it, and then like continue racing your game like that. It's this idea of creating an economy around your game itself, around the assets in your game, that can reward the players, not just basically be a kind of, traditional in-game economy. Once you leave the game, you wash your hands of the economy, it's all done. Like, you play Fallout, you're in a bunch of bottle caps. When you leave Fallout, you don't have those bottle caps anymore. World of Warcraft, if you kind of give up your World of Warcraft account, same idea. Like, you lose access to your gold at that point. What if that's not the way it has to work? Like, what if you can actually incentivize that, monetize it, do something with it, have people who want to make a living off of gaming, make a living off of gaming, have people who don't want to spend their whole life gaming, who maybe don't have as much time. I think about myself for this, because like I bought an Xbox, one of the brand new Xboxes. I swear to God, I haven't even plugged it in because we're like so busy with Bitwave. And so I think about myself, like, I don't really have time to play like really grindy games anymore. I would be the guy who would go and just buy the suit of armor. Maybe that makes me a terrible gamer. Please feel free to insult my gaming integrity. But like, that's not, like, there are different people in the different stages of life that want to engage with the games, they want to play, and they want to do it on their own kind of terms. So this is the idea that we're going to create economies around this, and we're going to incentivize things differently. Another piece of that, which is, the part I was just talking about, is very kind of like World of Warcraft focused. The other side of that is like, are there ways that we can change the incentive structure around something like Axie, like something around Farmville? So Farmville is a game, it's free to play, but the way they monetize it is they monetize your attention. And so in this case, like, you pay attention to ads that are on your screen, and that's how they make money. And in return, they give you a game that you can play. And so it's kind of this very one way. And these games are, there's a lot of moral questions and ethical questions about monetizing attention, especially when you get to like minors and things like that. Like, that's why there's a lot of like really interesting kind of discussions around what it means to monetize attention from a 13-year-old, because their brains are supple, and you can really start to manipulate them if you show them ads for things. Or, I mean, this is not the topic of this game, but like, there's a lot of things there. And so the goal here is like, well, are there other ways that you could potentially set up these sort of free-to-play games where, as you play, you're earning tokens? The tokens are how you buy stuff. People can just buy tokens, but then also you can earn tokens by playing. So it's almost like a rebate or rewards program built into the game, where you're still doing all the kind of stuff, but instead of the company purely extracting all the value, they're kind of giving it back as part of the rewards. Maybe not the best example in the entire world, but that is, there's these things called like play to earn games. You might have seen the acronym P2E around, which is Very, very confusing considering all the other acronyms we have floating around. But this is idea, like Axie Infinity is a game where as you play it, you earn tokens, and then those tokens allow you to buy other stuff and send money and do all this kind of stuff. And so you play the game and you get a reward on it. Is it like, can you quite make enough money to work? Like maybe in Indonesia, not in San Francisco, but maybe in like some parts of the world, you can play enough money. You can play enough to earn it as a living, but for most people, it's just a nice little kind of reward, and it hits your dopamine centers and all that kind of stuff. So that's GameFi. GameFi is this idea. It's overlaying financial incentives with gaming as it exists today. So I want to talk about a few of the games that people play today that are really, really fun. So Axie Infinity is the first one. Axie Infinity is a game where you are buying these little critters that are on the screen, and then you fight them with each other, or you go exploring, or you do other stuff like that. So these are the I forget what they call these. Oh my god, I can't believe I didn't look this up before. Axies. I guess they call them the Axies. But these little critters are purchasable. They fall into the same bucket as the Sonar Cats. Is that essentially like based on the one that got minted when these things first came out, they have different qualities. There's kind of a base construct, but you layer on different stuff on top of it. So you can look at this one, like these two are all kind of blobby. These two are obviously the same blobby, but this one has different hind quarter sections. They have different tails, different eyes, different colors. So it's the same idea of like you kind of take a model and you flavor it. And as part of the flavoring process, you might get really lucky and get a really, really rare one. You might get a really common one. It all sort of depends on what happens there. But it's kind of like Pokemon. Like you got to catch them all. Like your goal is to sort of collect these Axies. You fight them, you battle them. It's a very Pokemon kind of game. It's a great use case for it. I mean, Pokemon itself is a spectacular use case for NFTs, because then the idea is like, if you're a serious gamer, you're going to try to collect the really, really rare ones. If you're not, like me, like with Pokemon, like I like how Pokemon go. I'm not a serious gamer. If I get a really good one, I'm going to trade it away or sell it. So it like lets you kind of engage with the game on sort of your own terms. And that's the thing that like I'm going to hammer on this, which is like, even for people that really don't like this whole style of gaming, it really is one of the most consumer friendly versions of gaming, like so much more than loot boxes, in the sense that loot boxes prey on people's dopamine responses to gambling. This is more about letting people engage with games on their own kind of terms around this sort of stuff. Here's the next game we'll talk about, which is Decentraland. If you've heard of Second Life, this is Second Life 2.0. Well, actually, it's a bad example because there is a Second Life 2.0 also. But the idea here is that you're going to buy clothes and land and all these different things, and then you're going to go and you're going to jump into this virtual world as an avatar and engage in it. It's a metaverse style game. You know, there's parts of this that you could even say this isn't really a game. Like there are gaming pieces. There's different like little mini in-game things. But at the end of the day, you know, Second Life wasn't a game. Like Second Life was an online world to go engage in, like IMView or any of those other ones. So this is the idea of like a metaverse where you can kind of go engage with people, hang out, play with your friends, like play some games that are there, own land, build a house, like customize it how you want, all that sort of stuff. So this is a overlay of like the Sims with like SimCity, with some virtual kind of reality stuff, with kind of like an avatar and all of that. So it's another kind of game that's out there, and they monetize by selling plots of land and then selling skins and stuff like that on it. And this is one of these you can see here. One of the things that we're seeing in our business is luxury brands. Like I think there's an Adidas. The Adidas clip was the very, very first thing we showed. Adidas, Louis Vuitton. This is other ones, but like they're starting to get into the metaverse where one of the skins you'll be able to buy is a pair of Levi jeans, is a Louis Vuitton shirt, is a H&M sweater. All of those brands are seriously looking at how to get into the metaverse, and all that comes down like it's funny. I talk about this a lot at Bitway, which is we have a vision that businesses will more and more use digital assets. For a long time, there was an open question of like, what will be the lever point that brings a lot of the Fortune 500 companies in? I always thought it was going to be like efficiencies. Like ARAP in crypto is really, really cool. You can do some awesome stuff. It's really fast, all those great things. I love ARAP in crypto. That has not been what's bringing the Nikes of the world into crypto. It's been managing their brain. So it makes you realize a little bit about America as a capitalist society right now, which is we've moved into the service provider era. And a lot of service providing is managing your brand. So you think about Nike, like people think about Nike making shoes. Like Nike doesn't make shoes. Nike makes a swoosh and then puts it on shoes, and then puts it on sweatshirts and puts it in the metaverse. And so it's one of the things that's actually started to drag a lot of companies into the metaverse has been brand protection and leveraging their brand in a different area for a different generation of people that are not necessarily engaging with their other channels. Like, Gen Z, I think I read somewhere that people watching football, NFL football is down, like it's like 80% down or 90% down for the next generation. That is something that would concern Nike very much because they spend a lot of money putting their logo on college football teams. So like you have to find new places to engage, and the metaverse is like one of those examples around that kind of stuff. So finally, the other one is this is Bored Ape. Bored Ape is doing a fighting game. So think about Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter, but you can bring your Bored Ape and fight with it. And then they'll have, like, if you own the ape itself, you can fight with your ape. If you don't, you can fight with, like, a cadre of apes. There's gonna be a lot of really cool stuff around this. But this is a great example, which is like just a fighting game with your NFT, or like a fighting game that you can bring your kind of NFT to. One example I always talk about this. So something else to think about for NFTs that's really, really exciting in the gaming world is this idea of composability. So we talked about that for the racing game, where you can break your car apart, sell the carburetor, and then bring it back together. But imagine another world where you, as the gaming company that owns like Lego, so there's all those like Lego games out there. What if me as the gamer playing like Lego Harry Potter, I'm playing through, and I get like a special drop from a boss. I get a really special piece, like the Elder Wand or the Sorting Hat or something like that. Another part of composability is the idea that all this stuff is open on the blockchain. So anyone can introspect whether I own the Sorting Hat from the Lego game on it. So someone else who's building a fighting game like the Bored Ape fighting game could look at my Lego NFTs and say, hey, we love these. We're actually gonna let you bring it in. So like your Bored Ape is fighting and it gets to put on the Sorting Hat, or it gets to have an Elder Wand to like zap people with or something like that. So there's both composability within a suite of games to allow kind of movement of NFT assets or of assets across the games. But then you also have permissionless composability, which is saying that like anyone who likes one of your assets potentially could look at the NFT, see that you as a player have it, and then bring that into their game to use as part of their stuff there. So it's really, really cool stuff that it's sort of the future of all of these things of like permissionless use of like weapons and armor and all that kind of stuff. It also leads to interesting like advertising things, because like now I can see, oh, this person has a Bored Ape. I'm going to advertise to them. I'm going to send them specific airdrops, things like that, to try to get them to play my game, and then I'll give them special stuff when they play my game because they're obviously a high value gamer. So it just changes the whole world. This is the last. This is where I will hand things over to Joe. But the last thing is that like this is serious business. Like there is some real money around NFTs. OpenSea raised a bunch of money. It was not strictly for gaming, but not all these are strictly for gaming. But it just shows the NFT market. And then a lot of these are like Sandbox is gaming. That's a lot of money for a gaming company to raise. So I'm expecting this to continue exploding. One thing to remember, and then I'll hand over to Joe. One thing to remember is that the game life cycle is usually 3 years, if not more. Cyberpunk 2077 took 7 or 8 years to develop. So the work that people are doing today and like 2021, 2022 will start to really come to fruition in 23, 24, 25, when you're going to start to see the AAA games starting to hit this stuff. That also goes for if you're here from a gaming company, you might not believe in NFTs today, but at the end of the day, I don't know how to convince you that there's an inevitability to this because of the incentive structures. Like there's an inevitability to games where they pay people to play them, that if you're seeing this and you're on the fence, like you have to think about like you're having to look at what this looks like 3-4 years from now. 3-4 years from now, this is just going to be pervasive. So you have to kind of start thinking about the gaming now. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to my buddy Joe. Joe, take it away, my friend.
Yeah, sure. You were just talking about all the money in NFTs at Yuga Labs, which owns Bored Apes. I think they announced a week or two ago that they just raised $450 million at a $4 billion valuation. So they're valued at $4 billion at the moment. I mean, so coming from my background, which is, I'm a CPA. So I come to this from like an accounting business lens. I ultimately land on, okay, Pat, that's awesome. It's exciting. There's all this happening. So what, right? Like, how does this actually work from a business case? What has to happen internally at these companies to make it work? And it's tricky territory right now. I mean, frankly, there's a lot going on. And at least, if you're in the United States, what we don't have right now is clear regulation, whether that's, the FASB setting accounting rules, or SEC, or whoever it is, or the IRS even. They have not come in and said, oh, hey, here's very clear guidance on how to do this. They haven't. They've dabbled a little bit and said, okay, maybe you want to think about it like this, but nothing really firm, nothing structured. So what you end up with over the last, kind of year or few years is sort of doing patchwork with existing regulation, doing a lot of comparisons of, okay, what's this crypto activity most like in the existing real world we're familiar with? Will that drive the accounting treatment of it? So, it's tricky territory right now. And I think, you can see right here on this slide here, just the potential impact of incorporating that financial aspect into gaming. I mean, from the player's perspective, it's actually fairly straightforward, right? Like Pat mentioned, they can earn rewards in a token that they can convert right to cash on a DEX. A DEX is just a decentralized exchange that not to get too deep in the weeds, but essentially allows you to trade, any asset really at any time that they support. And from and you can also, they can make money on owning the characters and selling them, like Pat was mentioning. From the game creator side of things, there's really a handful of revenue streams. First, like primary sale of in-game assets. So this is where the player owns the character in the game. The character they're playing with is an NFT, and the gaming company sells it to them to start out with. But then, like Pat said, there's a lot of players that, well, I don't really care about this one, and I happen to get one that's really rare. So I'd like to turn that into some cash I can use now. So they may sell it on a secondary market. There are existing secondary marketplaces for NFTs. I think what we'll likely see is a lot of gaming platforms incorporate essentially their own marketplace system to trade with other players. And the big revenue stream piece of that for the game creator is typically they take a little slice of every one of those transactions. There's royalty revenue that they kind of, scalp off the top. And when you're dealing with some of the numbers, like I think the little like article image we had with Axie Infinity is they just passed $4 billion of in-game NFT sales. So if you're talking about, shaving a couple percentage points off of that as royalty income to that gaming company, the numbers get pretty massive. There's also opportunities for licensing revenue, to take these characters and license them for other commercial purposes. And then just, having a marketplace for tokens. And again, you could take fees on swapping the tokens. You can, there's a lot of opportunities once you get in here to capture revenue in a way that's just different than traditional gaming. But the last bullet point is most definitely true. These marketplaces create headaches. They create headaches for accounting, for finance. I mean, just tracking the data and figuring out what to do with it, especially given the uncertainty in the regulatory environment we're in regarding, crypto in general, and especially NFTs, it's really hard. So I think on the next slide, I can kind of talk a few more specifics. This is like, if we go.
By the way, Joe, I forgot, we don't have a slide.
If you go to the next one.
Oh, sorry. I was saying, by the way, Joe, we don't have a slide in here about it. But one of the things that we should talk about is that we'll talk about towards the end is compliance around this. This top bullet point here lends itself to compliance issues in terms of 1099 MISCs and other things that kind of people have not really had to deal with before. So we'll talk about that later. But it's a call out that I'm like, oh my God, I forgot we completely did not put a compliance slide in here about like what regulations you're putting there. So yeah, sorry, Joe, take it away, buddy.
No, it's okay. So I'm going to try to, I'm an accounting nerd, so it's hard for me, but I'm going to try to not get too deep in the weeds here. But this slide here is like the basis of what you need to know about crypto accounting, which is ultimately every transaction gets denominated back to fiat. So in the United States, that's US dollars. So when you're doing your accounting or your taxes, accounting means, for us, like, bookkeeping, your financial statements, all that. Taxes are what you report to the IRS. if someone receives one Bitcoin, the IRS, they don't care really that you received one Bitcoin. They want to see the US dollar. So at the time you received it, in this example, $40,000, that's how that transaction needs to be denominated when you report it. And so, recognizing the sales revenue is pretty straightforward. Okay, I got one Bitcoin, it's worth $40,000. I record that $40,000. But there's that other little bubble there, which is that $40,000 cost basis. And it's that bubble that we kind of have to follow that Bitcoin around with. And what cost basis means, it's just, hey, essentially, what did I pay for this? What is it? What was this worth at the time that I received it? And the reason why that piece of info is so important is because if you ever dispose of that, you sell it to somebody else. And now this example is Bitcoin, but it's true for NFTs. It's true for really any digital asset. If you sell it to someone else or exchange it for another asset, the rules, both accounting and tax, are going to say you likely have to record a gain or loss. And how do we calculate that gain or loss? Well, again, it all goes back to US dollars. And so they're going to say, okay, what is the difference between the value of it in US dollars at the time you sold it versus when you bought it, versus its cost basis? And, that's simple when we're dealing with, if I got one Bitcoin this year and then, a few months later I sold that one Bitcoin, fine, no problem. What happens when you're dealing with thousands of digital assets? And, you can expand when you talk about like the composability of like everyone could have an asset that actually breaks down into several other parts. It is not inconceivable to be dealing with millions of digital assets. And so that little cost basis bubble that needs to follow that asset along in your accounting system becomes really difficult to deal with. Now, I think, Pat, on the next slide, we can talk some more specifics. And, the first bullet really kind of touches on what I was just saying, the volume. So like, let's say, you could have a relatively small gaming company with just a few employees that, kind of spin up a game, and great, it's successful. It's a play to earn game. There's in-game NFT assets, all that. And it's successful. It's growing huge. Well, it is easily possible for a small gaming team to operate a game which now has all of these digital asset transactions in the thousands and thousands. A relatively small crypto game could be putting out a level of transactions that would be akin to like a major US retailer. But that small gaming team that likely does not have the accounting and finance bookkeeping staff to keep track of all this, or, sometimes the funds to hire the big pros that can do it all for them. And so it's like, in a matter of, we mentioned Yuga Labs getting valued at $4 billion. They came into existence less than a year ago. The speed at which this stuff moves is crazy. And so you could very easily sort of get into a position where, okay, hey, we spun this thing up. It's great. It's successful. And the sheer volume of transactions makes the accounting aspect of it, in your back office function almost impossible. The next piece here is really about, finance, accounting, and treasury management. This is a tricky area. How do you treasury NFTs? And when we say that, we mean, how do you store them? How do you safeguard them? Like, what do you do with them? We've seen a lot, especially in the last year or two, see custody services in the crypto space become very popular as crypto adoption spreads. A lot of folks say, hey, I don't want to custody my own assets. If you're familiar at all, you get a wallet, you get a 24-word seed phrase that you write on a little card, you lose the card, now you lose your asset. A lot of folks don't want to deal with that. So they'll use a custody service that essentially, to shortcut through it, handles all that for you. But a lot of these custody services don't handle NFTs. They won't custody them. So what do you do? And this really sort of speaks to, from my like accounting auditor brain, is like, what are your internal controls? What are your internal, your operational security? Who has access to what? What level of approval is needed to do things? Where are the keys stored? Can a single person control the assets, or are you going to use like a multi-signature, functionality that's going to require multiple people to sign off to move an asset? There's a lot of these questions that really kind of have to be dealt with on the front end so that you don't get yourself in a position looking backwards where now you're trying to fix something that's already broken. And I think, again, how to account for all those transactions at scale. Remember, every, this is like how to account for ETH transactions. Every ETH transaction is going to go back to US dollars. So on a simple transaction happening within a gaming marketplace, let's say it was within a gaming platform, a marketplace, user one, me, sells something to user two, Pat. Well, I, the seller, I have a cost basis in the asset that I'm selling. I have proceeds coming in. Both of those need to be denominated back to US dollars. The purchaser, and the same thing, is going to inherit a cost basis essentially from me on the value as it is today. And that's got to carry forward for him for that asset going forward. And the marketplace in itself might be taking a royalty cut of that. And so some of the funds, the sale funds, most of them are going to go to me, the seller, but maybe a little piece of them need to be diverted elsewhere. And so we have to record that in our books. We might have to record a liability for that, a revenue sharing expense for that. The accounting for this, all of a sudden the web starts to grow into really, a pretty cumbersome thing. And then you throw in what we got on the last bullet, which is like other blockchains, like Solana. There's a lot of people building on Solana right now, as well as several other blockchains. There's more, blockchain networks now than I can name. And, the key point here is that they are sort of all each their own, sometimes insular systems. And you may have a system that's interacting with several. And so now you have to pull in this data from all these different sources. And how does it line up? How does it line up if I got, wrapped ETH on the Polygon network and I bridged it over to the Ethereum network, and now I have that, and I use that Ethereum to buy an NFT for this game? It's a lot of data. It's a lot of kind of moving parts here. And, like I said, I don't want to get too deep into the weeds of how you solve for that. What I just want to make sure, you all as the audience gather is like, there is a requirement that you try to do that. And it's hard, but it's not impossible, and that's sort of why we, like, somebody like Bitwave exists, to try to make it more possible.
It's worth mentioning, like the part of the reason we also mention these two is like high volume on Ethereum is 1,000 a day. High volume on Solana, because of the nature of the blockchain, high volume on Solana is 100,000 a day. So like we have customers doing 100,000 transactions a day on the like validators and things like that on Solana, and that's like not even breaking a sweat. So even within these, like the nature of the blockchain will change the nature of the work that you're doing. So something that you could do in a spreadsheet or something that you could manually import, that goes away when you get to some of these higher volume chains there. So
yeah, for sure. We can go to the next one. And for this slide, there's a lot going on right here. But what we have over on the left-hand side is just sort of like, well, who are the participants? This is in the NFT industry, but again, an NFT is a digital asset. And I think sometimes, that's worth clarifying, because I think sometimes, especially folks who aren't in this world real deep, but from the outside looking in, often think about an NFT of it's a picture, like, oh, didn't you buy that JPEG? And it's like, well, kind of like what Pat mentioned in the beginning. No, not really. What you really bought was a digital asset. You bought a token on a blockchain that contains some data that oftentimes points to a server that, using computer programs can ultimately translate that data and spit you out an image to look at. And that's great. And that's all well and good. But you didn't necessarily you didn't buy the JPEG. You bought the digital asset token. And so, in the NFT industry, I think, what we're going to see a lot in this emerging like GameFi industry is they're all digital assets. So they all need to be accounted for like this. And different players in this ecosystem sort of have different needs. They all need to be, tracking different stuff. So as a creator, whether it's a creator, of gaming NFTs or just regular NFTs, they've got income coming a couple different ways. Like we mentioned, they are creating those NFTs. There's some costs that go into that need to be captured and accounted for, because then they're going to sell them and they're going to have some revenue, and that's going to be ordinary income to them. And that's great. But again, you got to count for every single one of those transactions. What cryptocurrency did we sell it for? How does that denominate back into US dollars? And then going forward, if other parties are trading these assets back and forth, are we getting a piece of that royalty? If so, we need to be accounting for every single transaction that they're not really a party to. As a creator, it's two other users swapping assets directly, but by utilizing the smart contracts, I as the creator can get a piece of that. And I need to make sure that I'm capturing every single one of those and the amounts are right. The intermediaries can be like a lot of different people. I think, an intermediary could be a buyer, a seller, a player in a gaming ecosystem, or it could be your auditing firm. It could be your accountant. It could be, anyone who you may have to report to that requires information regarding your revenue, regarding your bookkeeping. If you get a loan out, you likely are going to have some, if you have debt on your books, you probably have some debt covenants in there regarding your financial performance. You probably have some underlying responsibility to report your financial activity. Well, how do you do that in this environment? You really have to make sure you're tracking very closely, and sort of those parties need to be able to independently validate that all those transactions are there, that we've got all of them, and that they're accurate. And then the marketplace itself, this is where all that volume is happening, and they got to figure out, how does that pie get split up? If there was a sale for one Ethereum, well, who gets what? The seller gets this piece, the creator gets this piece, we take a fee, all that, and that gets complicated. And again, you have to account for all of that. Now, the nice part about, crypto taxes is that we do have the blockchains, and the blockchains are this distributed, public ledger. It's like having a huge receipt that everybody's got a copy of. And what that's great for is that, what you can do is you can look on the blockchain and verify that these transactions happened. You can verify the amounts that they happened. The problem is doing that at scale. So typically you're going to have to leverage some type of software service, which is like, again, that's why folks like us at Bitwave exist, to integrate all of these chains. So, okay, hey, we may need to integrate. We're operating on Ethereum. We're operating on the Bitcoin network. We're operating on Solana, on Polygon, on Avalanche. We need all these transactions. We've got 100 wallets. We've got, 10,000 users, whatever it is. And we need to capture all of this, and we need to have it happen automatically, because it's just impossible to do manually. If you've ever, I tried to do my own taxes for my little NFT hobby trading. It was a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. I can't imagine now. That's what I'm doing on the weekends in my free time. I can't imagine trying to do it in a business case with any substantial volume. And so that's where a service like Bitwave, and I think the key function of something like Bitwave, it isn't just capturing that data, it's making it usable for you. So if you are a company that already has an accounting function, you already use QuickBooks or a NetSuite, or you have some accounting system, well, how do we get that data into there to make it link up with everything else and all of our other general ledger accounts, all that kind of, accounting nerdy stuff that nobody wants to think about until they have to. That's where you have to leverage something like Bitwave, our software, it links directly with those accounting systems. So what we're doing, we're going to the chains, the blockchains, we're going to those networks, we're pulling in all that data, we're filtering it, help interpreting it, all that. And then we can pass that data along through into your accounting system. So it's actually usable information for you. That's really what our main focus is.
Yeah. So I know we have a few more slides we want to get to, but we have 8 minutes left in the webinar. If anyone has any questions, please drop them into either the chat or into the Q&A. We'd love to answer any questions. But Joe, while you were talking, I had a question that I would like to discuss with you. Where I'm gonna hijack this a little bit, as is my prerogative as CEO here. I have a question for you. So when you normally pick up so NFTs, as we sort of talked about, they're kind of an amalgam of a few different things, and they don't necessarily feel like the same thing. So let's take Bored Ape as a really interesting example, which is Bored Ape is both the digital right, it's both the piece of art that you're collecting. It is there are some copyright rights that are applied along with it. And then there tends to be this kind of membership thing. Actually, let's not do Bored Ape. Let's do Gary Vaynerchuk's thing, because Gary Vaynerchuk is even a better example of this, because there is a very, very clear membership aspect, which is owning the NFT gives you access to the restaurant. Um, accounting for future service delivery, as you would like, if Gary V had a $100 a month subscription and you paid it up front, you paid $1,200 a year for it. I think that's relatively simple accounting for how you basically defer the revenue or whatever, whatever you're going to do around services being rendered over a period of time. What happens when you overlay something that is sort of so multifaceted, where you have a video game? I'm putting you on the spot here because I didn't prep you at all for this, but it did occur to me. So like you have like the art aspect where you're just selling a pure digital right. You have the copyright aspect, which is really a grant of an intangible asset. And then you have like some sort of membership piece that comes along with it. How do you start to think about accounting for that? Like, should it be deferred revenue? Do you need to be picking up service rendered liabilities? Like, what are some of the considerations?
Yeah, that's a great question. My easy answer is it's complicated. I think the hard answer is that, you're talking about some road that is really sort of still to be paved. I mentioned at the beginning how uncertain the regulatory environment is. And I think a lot of us in this industry are really dying for clearer regulation. And I think what you just hit on is really cuts to the core of what makes accounting for NFTs really hard, which is that everyone is different. Every single one might come with slightly different benefits, some in real life, physical benefits, some give you rights to tangible goods, some give you, you can farm tokens, you're going to get tokens and those have, and so accounting for each NFT sort of has to be looked at individually. And you kind of have to, you may have 5 different NFTs and they all fit sort of in a different bucket, but it is reasonable what you're saying of if I'm an NFT creator and I'm selling this NFT and I'm creating all the revenue up front, but I have obligations that I still need to satisfy, then, essentially working out a reasonable cost to deliver those obligations and counting some revenue as deferred revenue is a reasonable treatment. It is. Getting there is kind of hard, right? You gotta kind of, there's a lot of kind of math and hand wringing that's got to happen to get there, but it is a reasonable treatment. And I think
it's reasonable to basically say, okay, we're going to call 30% of this as just digital asset revenue that we're going to recognize immediately. We're going to call 30% or I guess 70% we'll call as more like services revenue that we're going to recognize over the course of. But then you even have like a TVL question of like, what's your, if you don't have a subscription model, like, I guess you're going to say like, okay, we'll make 24 months is what we're going to amortize the revenue over. We're going to, separate the revenue over. So we'll recognize the other 70% over the next 24 months or something, right?
Yeah. And what constitutes a real obligation is putting, hey, we're going to send you merch someday on your roadmap. Does that count as an obligation or no? Is there a use?
It's just like, hey, sometimes we'll host parties in New York. Like is that a perk? Or
right,
exactly. Like, yeah.
So it's hard, and that's part of these pieces where I say, there's still road to be paved here. Is it okay if I hop to a question that's in the chat here?
Get into it, buddy.
So somebody asked, about Zed Racing. Zed Racing is a real popular NFT. It's honestly, it's horse racing on your computer. You get to own the horses and you can breed them, stud them out. You can run races and earn funds. And so the question that came in was, okay, if I'm doing that and I'm bringing in income, my horse, you got a good horse, it's winning races. How do I account for that income? Because I'm not selling my NFT. And that's a great question. That would be akin, I think, in my mind, in the DeFi world, to like staking income, or essentially you have an asset, you have that digital horse, and you are deriving income from it. You're not selling that horse. So the accounting stipulation here is likely, again, not tax advice. If you were to sell that NFT, it would probably fall into capital gains. It would be treated like a capital gain. However, if you're not selling that NFT and you're just using that asset to produce income, it's probably going to flow to the top of your 1040 as ordinary income, which, depending on who you are, your tax rates may differ. So it's still going to be income to you, but it may fall in 2 different buckets. It's kind of like the example Pat just said of like, you can't just say, oh, income from NFTs falls here. Or no, you really have to look at each situation and sort of try to make the best corollary to, what's an accounting treatment that is well established right now in the traditional business world. And this is where, like, if you're getting down this road, a good accountant who is familiar with cryptocurrencies and the treatment is often, well worth what you pay them. That's my plug for all my accountant friends out there.
100%. That was a great answer. So we've got 1 minute left. I think if there's any questions, please ask them. If there's not, we'll just kind of keep banging through this a little bit. We'll probably spend a little bit of time on here, but if there's any questions, please ask them right now. But thank you guys so much for it. Joe, if you want to do a minute on this slide, go for it.
Yeah, for sure. I think, making your accountant's life easy. I think if I had to boil this down into one thing, it's think about this stuff early and document. Game plan. A lot of folks jump into crypto sort of head first and then figure it out later. And, they usually end up paying for that either in a tax liability or to pay someone to figure it out literally. So I organize and create process for wallets, having a different Ethereum wallet for each type of activity you're doing to keep your activity clean. Documenting what you're doing in the same way as a business, you would document a revenue cycle. Well, document your crypto activity. They are revenue cycles, so that when you go back and look at all your transactions, you can figure out what the heck you did. We talked about operational security to treasury these assets, and think about whatever internal controls and security you would have over your local bank checking account on steroids, because there is no branch manager to call if you lose your funds. So, these are the kind of things to think about early. Get advice. If you're new to the space, reach out to folks that are in it, figure out, best practices. Think about, plan early, and document.
Yep. Great advice. So guys, we're gonna leave it there. I'll leave this slide up as the last one. If you're interested, please email us info@goaway.io for the Enterprise Digital Assets Summit. It's going to be a blast. It'll be just content like this all day long, nonstop. So it'll be really, really, really fun. I am just so much looking forward to it. Mostly, I'm excited to get together with all my friends in the new year. So thank you so much for joining us. This webinar will be posted online on our YouTube channel, and we look forward to. We'll have another webinar probably the next couple of weeks. They'll be equally as engaging, as fun as this. And thank you so much for your time today. Have a really wonderful Tuesday, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.